So one of the first things that we did, which is not the first thing that most founders do, because I've been working with a lot of other startups and I can say that's been an issue for them. So one of the first things we did is focus on the brand, the story, the narrative, how it comes to life, but also the mission, the values, really understand what it is that we want to create and what are those pillars. A lot of times most founders focus on the product. You know, they focus on the product and the brand is really secondary, and they don't really think too much about the colors or the logo or all the pieces. And individually they might like all of them, but when you put it together, sometimes it doesn't really hang together. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure we did is have a strong purpose. So we set up the Masumi Institute from the get-go, which is all about ocean conservation. Because our feeling was, if we're going to take our main ingredient from the ocean, we want to be able to give back.
I like that.
So I think that's, you know, that's often an afterthought for a lot of brands, but I think it should really be baked into how you want to go to market and how you think about it, because then from the get-go, you're held accountable. So, you know, just an example of this for us, it's hard to be a brand that cares about ocean conservation and be in plastic bottles. Yet we're in plastic bottles. And it's bugged me since we launched. It's literally been like just irking me. So we just launched a crowdfunding campaign on iFund Women to do a large size sustainable refillable bottle that gets rid of the plastic.
Okay.
So, you know, it's just because, again, it's our mission. And if you use that lens on everything, you're going to be pushing your brand to do more innovation that helps with that mission.
So, I mean, I think that's a really good way that you put it, that, you know, you think about the brand first and not just your product, because if you're thinking about the product, then you're thinking, I guess, very transactional. Whereas with the brand, you're really thinking about how do you connect with the person who you hope to benefit with your product, right?
Yep.
But I guess for people who maybe aren't convinced, or let's say that who are just obsessed with the product, right? How do you talk about like why this way is so much better? Is it because that the way people consume, I hate the word consumer, but the way people buy products has changed so much that they're really looking to connect with you as a brand? Or like, is this because things have changed? Because, you know, 10, 20 years ago, people weren't saying this and now they are. So what's changed?
I'm not sure it's actually that the brand is more relevant. I actually think in a lot of ways the brand has become less relevant.
Interesting. Okay.
But it's more about efficiency. Because there are so many pieces to launching a brand these days, and so many platforms and so many, you know, things you have to connect, channels you have to connect, that it's super inefficient if you don't have a consistent message and you don't know what your story is and how to maximize each channel, you know, because you can't just be a cookie cutter kind of thing and put the same message everywhere. But at the same time, you know, you need to be able to keep things within the confines of, like, if you think of a book and there's a title and then there are chapters, you know, you want the chapters of the book to make sense and to hang together. And I think that to me is more why it's important than you know, the idea of a brand loyalty kind of, you know, being the way that consumers think these days, because I'm not sure that's true. But I think when you do have the consistency, it drives awareness. People start to, you know, you build recognition. There are a lot of categories where trust is really important still. You know, you just need to have the foundation. Otherwise, what I see a lot of founders do that I've worked with, they're going back and having a retrofit and redo their website or redo their social content because they realize it's off brand, because they've waited to figure out the brand until, you know, they've had like 6 months in the market or a year in the market. And then they go, oh yeah, that's not really what we want to be about. And then it's kind of a mishmash, and it's just way harder to go back and retrofit. It's just, if you can, you know, do it from the beginning, know what you stand for, it just everything fall in place so much easier.
So there's always this age-old debate about how decisive you should be when you're an entrepreneur and how you start, right? So, you've got this one camp that says, no, make a really big business plan, like try to plan everything you can. And then you've got this other camp that's just like, just go do it. And if something messed up, fix it. I tend to fall into like, it's always like this difficult balance to
Mm.
go with, right? And, there's no way someone's going to get their brand perfect at the get-go, but how much time or effort, or how do you know that you've got something to start with? Like, what's that check mark in your head that tells you that, okay, this
Yeah.
is all right?
I mean, I like to boil things down into like a very simple one-page framework where
Hmm.
you can tell the brand in a sentence. You understand the competitive set in your white space, and you can articulate that. You can explain the challenge very clearly. You know who your enemy is. You know what your values are. So really boil it down into that one page. You don't have to do a huge, massive deck exploring every avenue of
Yeah.
the brand and every piece of content that you're going to put out there. That's I'm not a believer in that, but I think you do have to have a clear understanding of your go-to-market strategy, who you're talking to in terms of your target, um, how you're going to reach them, the basic stuff, so that as you're putting things together, it makes sense. Now, having said that, I'm always a believer that if the business pivots, like look what happened with COVID, right?
Hmm.
That you've got to pivot too.
Hmm.
So, you've got to have enough flexibility in the system to move if you need to move, and not have to like start over.